What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast. You're in for a treat today. We have a young gentleman that has accomplished a lot in a very short period of time. The Real Jason Duncan is the founder of one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America and one of the top entrepreneurial companies in the country. He is a multi-award winning entrepreneur and founder of 12 companies who got his start in entrepreneurship as an unemployed school teacher in 2010. Educator-turned-entrepreneur, Jason now runs a mastermind called the Exeter Club that teaches entrepreneurs how to live the exit lifestyle through a method he calls exit without exiting. Brother, I mean, accomplishing a lot in less than 15 years, 12, 13 years. Man, you've been busy.
Yeah, well, I don't like to be busy. Sometimes I am.
Well, it sounds like this whole lifestyle, again, what I've reading about you and kind of what you've done, not working as hard, but making more money, helping more people. That's pretty awesome. But I got to hear the story, man. School teacher to entrepreneur. You don't hear that every day. So what was kind of the precipice to be like, hey, man, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to start doing this.
So when I was teaching school, I taught eighth grade American history, and I live in the Nashville, Tennessee area. So I was teaching at a county just north of Nashville, and it was absolutely the most fulfilling thing I'd ever done. I found the thing. Like, I am a teacher. I love it. I absolutely love teaching. And so I taught quite successfully for 4 years. And then the Great Recession started trickling down its ill effects to the school districts all across the country, really in about 2010. So in 2010, my principal came to me and he sat me down. He said, man, I'm really sorry, but I can't renew your contract for next school year. And he explained why. And they were letting 2 teachers go out of that building. And there were 2, I think every building in the district was losing a couple of teachers. I didn't have tenure. I was the last guy hired in the building. But I was the number 1 teacher in the county in my subject area. I was a model teacher. I was highly qualified to teach my subject area. I had a certificate for administration. So I was a model teacher, but the way they made decisions, imagine the government making terrible decisions, but the way they made decisions was based on tenure, and I was the last guy hired. So it forced my hand, and I felt like, of course, at first, I'll just go get another teaching job somewhere because this is what I love to do. And nobody was hiring teachers. Nobody. It was, now I could have moved out of state somewhere and found a place, but no, I didn't want to leave Nashville. Nashville's home. And so I had 2 options. The way I looked at it, it's like, I can go back into the corporate world and be a salesperson because I'm pretty good at sales. I could do that, or I could try my hand at entrepreneurship. And I chose the latter. And I gave myself, and I love telling this part of the story, but I gave myself until August the 15th to make something of the business, because that was the last day I was getting a paycheck from the state. So August the 15th, I was going to get my last measly little paycheck. I think my last year annual salary as a teacher was $38,600 and some dollars. It was nuts, right? But that was my last check from the county. And I thought, okay, I'll do something. If I don't do something by then, I told my wife, I said, baby, I'll go get a quote real job. Well, on August the 12th, I rode the elevator up to a conference room on the 3rd floor of a regional hospital here in the Middle Tennessee area, and made the pitch of a lifetime for an LED lighting project, because that's the company. I'd started the company around LED lighting, and they said yes. Now that the story of what happened in that is even better. If you're going to talk sales, there's a great sales story there. But they said yes, and that turned out to be a $2.3 million project over the next 3 years, and launched me into entrepreneurship and to business ownership. And that's how I became an accidental entrepreneur.
Well, you know what's interesting about saying accidental? You're actually pretty intentional by setting a date, manifesting this whole thing. So it sounds accidental, but truth be told, brother, you were like, look, this is when it's going to happen. Even if you didn't maybe say it that way, that's what happened. And that's, I love that. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned in that. I love sales stories. So I want to hear the sales story, because you it's one of my favorite things to hear, like the good objection or screw up or whatever, and led to this great sale for you.
So here I am. I'm sitting at this conference room table that is huge. It's probably 20 something feet long. It's a big conference table. And I'm sitting on one of the long sides of the table at the end. So I'm still on the long side, but I'm at the end. And my business partner is sitting just to my left. Directly across from me on the other side of the long table is the vice president of, I think, facilities or engineering, like the number one dude. He's sitting across from me, and he looked and sounded just like Herman Cain. If you guys remember Herman Cain, who ran for president, I think he's Godfather's Pizza guy. Like, that was his deal. But he looked and sounded just like Herman Cain. Big, imposing black man, just great deep voice, friendly guy, but like an imposing figure. And next to him, to his right, was the chief engineer for the entire facility. And I had been working with him throughout the entire process. And then 2 chairs down from him, like not even next to him, 2 chairs down from him, almost at the other end of the table, is the CFO. So here, that's the setup. And it's important I tell you these details because I think visually it's important to know. And I have an 11-inch white MacBook. You guys remember that, JM? Do you remember how those tiny little white MacBooks? That was my computer. And I had it on the conference room table at the end between me and Herman Cain. So it's sitting between me, and I don't have it hooked up to the screen. I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't have a clicker. So I'm leaning as far as my arm would lean across this table, and I'm clicking the space bar to go through my slides. And the CFO so far away, he's having to use binoculars to see this thing. And I'm going through my pitch, and I'm doing a good job because I am a good salesperson, and I made a pretty good presentation slide deck, right? So I'm going through this, and Herman Cain, we'll call him that. Herman Cain stops me halfway through this. Well, actually 2/3 of the way through my pitch. And he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Has anybody ever told you no?" And I looked at him and I said, "No, sir, they haven't." And of course, I didn't tell him he's the first guy I've ever asked, but he said, "Has anybody ever told you no?" I said, "No." And then he looked at me and he says, "Well, why wouldn't I do this?" And I said, "I don't know. Why wouldn't you?" And then he looks down the table at the CFO. Now, the CFO and my business partner had known one another. As a matter of fact, the CFO had worked for my business partner one time back in the day. That's how we kind of got introduced to the opportunity. And so he looked at the CFO and he says, because he knows that, he goes, "Do you trust these guys?" Because here we are, like, we're pitching this $1 million project for this energy savings for this hospital and lighting, blah, blah, blah. "Do you trust these guys?" And he says, "Well, I trust him." And he pointed at my partner because he knew him. He said, "I trust him. And if he trusts Jason, yeah, I trust him." And then Herman Cain turns and he looks at me. I'm not even done with my presentation. He looks at me and he just stares at me. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, what's about to happen? And then he looks back at the CFO and he says, "Write the man a check." I swear to you, that's the way that thing ended. Now, that first check was only like 18 grand. It was kind of like a to get us started on the process of getting the project prepared. But man, that elevator ride back down to the car, we were dancing like little schoolgirls. It was like, this is amazing. It happened. So that was one of the greatest days, the greatest sales stories and greatest days of my life, because that proved the concept. Like, this business idea that I came up with just out of thin air, this will work. I can actually make this work.
Well, no doubt your presentation that no one could see, but what was on there must have been great. But here's the other thing, brother. They trusted you, or at least your business partner. Again, there's so many nuggets in what you're saying in these things, these mishaps or these unintentional things. Look, they're buying you. Yes, you're going to provide a service and a product and all that great stuff, but they bought you, this person that was willing to put himself out there at this long table, not connected, all that good stuff. And they bought you. I have to ask, why LED lighting? What, did you have any knowledge in it? How did you choose that as your first, company to start? How'd you choose that?
So this is another interesting part of the story. So in 2010, A friend of mine that I knew, we didn't know each other terribly well, but we were connected through church circles. And he'd come to me early in 2010 and said, "Hey man, I got this business idea. I want to start a business with you. I want you to come in." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm teaching school. I love it. I don't want to do a business." And he convinced me to do it. So we started this business and we named it Future Vision Energy. And the reason we named it that is because his idea was he wanted to create a hydrogen generator for automobiles. Now I'm a history teacher with a background in pastoral ministry and sales. Like I don't know anything about hydrogen. This is all foreign, but he knew I had a pretty good business mind and I was good at sales and I was pretty well connected. So he said, "Let's do this." So we started Future Vision Energy in 2010. Now, fast forward the next spring in April of 2011, that's when my principal came and had that conversation with me about, "Hey, this ain't going to happen." So I had this company kind of going in the background. We weren't making any money. We were kind of piddling around with this generator idea, and it was working okay, but it wasn't going to make money long term. It wasn't a viable idea. So when that conversation with my principal happened, I took stock of what was available to me. I said, "Okay, I have two options. I can go into the corporate world and sell, or I can start a company." Well, I already have the company. What can I do with it? Well, I knew hydrogen wasn't going to do it. So I've got it. It's already named Future Vision Energy. So what can I do in the energy space? And so I looked at energy conservation or energy efficiency rather than energy creation as a potential. And I thought, okay, what could I do around that? And somehow LED lighting at that moment came across as an idea. And I thought, you know what, I could sell that. And so that's how I chose the idea, because we built a company that really didn't have anything to do with LED lighting, but had the word energy in it. And I thought I could make this work. So that's why we did LED lighting.
Well, it's a great name, I have to say. And it gave you, I guess, your route of what you're going to go. Cause I was like, yeah, it's a brilliant name. Future Vision. I'm in. Energy, fantastic. But it's pretty scalable because you can take that many different directions: hydrogen engines, or I guess LED lighting. So one of the things that's going through my head in being an entrepreneur for many, many years, 12 companies in the span of less than 12 years. To me, that's pretty amazing. And there's obviously a formula, Jason, that you use to find these companies, to build these companies. And then I can't wait to hear the exit without exiting strategy. But talk to me about 12 companies in 12 years. That's pretty remarkable.
Well, it's a stupid thing to do. I don't recommend it at all. I've got a friend of mine who was a guest on my podcast. I have a podcast called The Root of All Success, and he was a guest, and we've since become friends. And he owns like 50 something companies with the goal of owning a couple thousand over the next several years. And I'm like, okay, whatever works for you, dude. I am not into that. So when I stepped away from day-to-day operations, now we just to kind of bring the story to full circle. So Future Vision Energy, we eventually rebranded as Energy Lighting Services because we only really did lighting. So we rebranded to ELS, Energy Lighting Services, and that's the brand name today. And I still own that company to this day. But when I stepped away from day-to-day operations of ELS in January 2020, I owned only two companies. I owned a real estate investment company that my wife and I owned together that was really inactive, and we hadn't bought anything. We had a couple of properties, but it was pretty much inactive as a company. It was active legally, but inactive in reality. I owned that, and I owned ELS. So when I stepped away, the first thing I did is I started what I thought was going to be a results university is what I called it. It was going to be this education course company for coaching. It would be a way for me to coach. And then I started a coaching company that is now my main company that I do on a daily basis called TRJD Enterprises. And then I started an e-commerce company for one of my apprentices to run for me. And then I started a hard money lending company with another partner. And then I started a holding company to kind of manage that stuff. And then I started doing all this stuff, and I broke my own rules. So I believe and understand that the word focus stands for follow one course until successful. That's what focus, I believe, stands for. And there's this old, I think I forget if it's Hindu or if it's Indian. I forget where it comes from, but it's an old proverb that says, "He who chases two rabbits catches neither." And I was not following my own rules of focus. And so for 10 years, I'd focused on building ELS into a magnificent company, fast growing company, profitable company. And I'd done really well at that. But when I stepped away from daily operations, which goes into the exit without exiting thing, I did this. I believe the hype of the Instagram gurus that say you should have 7 sources of income. And while it's true that most very successful entrepreneurs have 7 sources, they didn't start that way. They didn't come out of the gate swinging and having 7 entities. And that I believed the wrong thing about that. And I thought, okay, I'm stepping away from my main thing. I got to start getting my investments diversified. I got to do all these things. And in fact, not only did it slow me down, but it also prevented me from making the type of money that I probably could have made had I just been focused on one thing. So over the last 2 years, a lot of those companies came up and went down. Like my e-commerce company is defunct. I shut it down. I'm not gonna slam Amazon, but had a really bad experience with them, and so I shut that down. My hard money lending company is still going pretty well. It's going all right, but I shuttered everything else. I've got the real estate stuff in the background, but really all I'm doing now is paying attention to coaching, because that's who I am. Going back to my story from beginning, I'm a teacher. God created me to use my gifts of teaching and leadership to help other people get the results they want in life. That's what I should be focused on. And had I paid attention and followed my own rule and focused on that in the beginning of 2020, my coaching business would be a multiple 7-figure, maybe even 8-figure business now, but I'm still growing. It's still coming up. But anyway, I think it's a dumb thing to do. I did something stupid, so I don't recommend it at all.
Well, it's easy to do, right? Especially if you're seeing success in one area and then, the shiny object over here, you're like, well, I could do that. And then the shiny object, oh, I could do that. My wife smacks me on the daily to be like, hey, bro, let's focus in. So I definitely understand that. I have to imagine those companies that are still succeeding, and maybe this is part of the exit without exiting, my mind immediately goes, he must have met some really remarkable people to be a part of those companies, because the systems I imagine are in place, but for you to be able to step away to a degree from the day to day, that means you've empowered someone else to really perform these duties, to make sure that those companies are operating. Is that some of the basis, brother? And I'm guessing, I don't know your system. I can't wait to hear it. But is that part of it, is just finding the right human beings that see that vision, know what the company's all about, what it stands for, and where it's going?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that it kind of goes back to my story. So in 2010, we started Future Vision Energy, and I was still teaching. In 2011, I shifted to make it more about LED than creation of alternative energy. And so for the next 10 years, well, let's see, no, it wasn't 10. So from 2011 to 2017, so 6 years. So in those next 6 years, I was heads down running the daily operations of the business, and I was the hero of that business. We grew significantly. I was making more money. Let's just suffice it to say I made a whole lot more than $38,000 a year, but I was doing really well. The company was doing well. I hired some amazing people, and I spent a lot of time paying attention to how to build good culture, because I somehow just intuitively knew that. And maybe that's my background as a pastor and a teacher. I just knew that loving on, caring for, and investing in people was the right thing to do, whether or not you ever were going to do something different with it later. So those 6 years was just the grind, the hustle, the grind that the Instagram gurus tell you have to do, which is complete bullshit. Like that's so against what reality is. The grind porn that we're taught it's not true. You don't have to do that, but that's what I did. And I woke up in 2017. I had this awakening thinking, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I loved teaching. And I've enjoyed the money, and I've enjoyed running a company, but I don't really like LED lighting at all. Like, there's nothing about this that's exciting or passionate, and it's not fulfilling. And so I hired a business coach for the very first time. And that's really key, because I'm a business coach now, and I believe everybody needs one, but I hired a business coach for the first time in 2017, and I sat him down, he sat me down, we talked, and I was like, okay, what do you see here? And what he was the first one to point out to me that I had inadvertently built a business that revolved around me. And I was the hero of the business. I was doing, everything. I was the chief administrator, the chief financial person, the chief salesperson, et cetera. Now I had great employees, and that's not to diminish their abilities, but still every system and process ran through me. And when I talked to my coach, I'm like, well, how do I escape this? I've built a prison. How do I get out of this? And I know lots of entrepreneurs listen to this right now. They know exactly what that feels like because I was right there. Okay, sell it. We'll sell it to somebody else. Well, it's not worth anything, even though we were very profitable. I mean, very profitable. We were doing really well. It wasn't worth anything because I was the guy that made it happen. I was the magic dust that made everything work correctly. And so I would have had to stay in it. And I'm like, that ain't going to work. I don't want to do that. So that is when the exit without exiting concept began to start formulating my brain. It's like, well, how do I get out of daily operations without selling it? So I spent the next 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, really doing a deep dive into the things that you were assuming, which your assumptions were correct. How do I embrace delegation and do it the right way? How do I eliminate stress, not only for myself, but from the company and from the employees? How do I establish the right systems and processes? How do I invest in people so that they can take care of this business so that I can go into my next big adventure without selling it? And that's what I did. And it took me 2.5, 3 years to do it. And then once I successfully completed that, what do I do next? And now it's like, well, I did that. I bet other people would want to do it too. So I'm a teacher. Let me teach them how to do it. So that's why I do what I do now, coaching people to live the exit lifestyle through the method of exit without exiting.
So one of the things you've mentioned a couple of times is the, Instagram gurus or the, now TikTok, you hear these people saying, got to do this, got to do that. And as you said, so often it's horseshit. It's like that sounds good from an armchair quarterback. Or if you really don't value having a personal life at all and not being fulfilled, you've mentioned that a couple times, brother. What has been the key for you to say, all right, who do I listen to? You mentioned the business coach, which I'm a huge fan of as well. If somebody you're working with doesn't have their own coach, stop working with them. I've said that many times and I believe that. But outside of that, because you clearly are passionate about teaching, you're teaching us right now through story, through your experience. But what would you suggest to people so that they don't fall into those same traps that you and so many others have watching these videos saying, well, that guy's successful, therefore I should go do that too?
Well, I believe this. I believe that business ownership is not the goal. Rather, business ownership should provide the financial resources to live the lifestyle that we want, that we really want. That's the goal. But so many people, entrepreneurs who are in fact just job owners, not even business owners, they're job owners. These people think that business ownership is the goal. I own a business. I own a Subway franchise, or I own a shoe shop, or I own whatever. I own an ice cream store. That's not the goal. Now, if you think that's the goal and you're cool with scooping ice cream until you can't anymore, and then you shut the store down and then you live on Medicaid for the rest of your days until you die, okay, I think that's a terrible and crappy way to think about life. But if that's your deal, that's you. I'm not talking to you. But for everybody else out there, you should really reconsider, what's the goal here? Is it to own the business and to grow the business, or is it to let the business provide the lifestyle for you that you really want? That's what I consider the exit lifestyle. So I ask every client when they come on as a new prospect, one of the questions I ask every person when they apply for coaching with me is that I say, listen, let's pretend that today you sold the business and you're not a gazillionaire, but you got enough money that you don't need anything. Like your daily bills are paid, your family's taken care of. What would you do every day? And, some of the people say, JM, they're like, well, I would still probably come into the office. I'd still work. I'd still do this. Okay, that's fine. Others would say, well, I'd travel. I've been wanting to go to Italy for so long. I've never been. I wouldn't go. Okay. Others say, well, I'd buy an RV and I'd travel the country in it, or I'd spend more time with my family, or I'd do more volunteer work. Whatever that is, I believe that you can have a version of that today without selling the company. Now, sure, if your version of that is I want to live on a beach in Bali and sip drinks all day long and never do lift a finger again, Well, that's probably not likely for most people. There are the people who sell out and can do that, but most people can't. Most entrepreneurs sell out and they still have to create income later. I show my clients how to build an exit lifestyle today without selling it, that you can live a version of that now, because the business isn't the goal. The business should be providing you the resources to live the life that you want. So to that end, my wife and I, we travel about a week every single month in our RV. We go somewhere. This has been a weird year because I also broke another one of my rules this year. I'm good at failing and breaking my own rules, but normally we travel. If you look at that, add that up, it's about a third of the year that we're gone. We're somewhere else. I take motorcycle trips frequently. I love to go motorcycling. I spend time hanging out with people. And one of my goals for 2023 is Fridays are now no longer going to be work days for me. I'm shifting, even now in July of 2022, I'm shifting my calendar to by the end of the year that Fridays, I won't work anymore on Fridays. And I say work, I'm not taking meetings, not doing calls, not doing no presentations, nothing like that. Just going to spend time doing what I want on Fridays. And I'm building a lifestyle, even in my coaching business, that I want. The business should support that lifestyle. And that's what I do as a coach every day.
Yeah, I like how you asked that question, because it doesn't have to be one or the other. So often you hear people are like, I'm going to grind and grind and grind, and then I'll go do that. But what if you died along the way? And how many times have we heard that? You're no longer, one of my least favorite when I work with executives, they build all this wealth and they never get the opportunity to actually enjoy it. It's one of the saddest American stories, I think, because they did put in the work, they did all the effort, but then they don't get to enjoy it. I love how you ask that question and say, why not both? Why can't you create both and do it in an efficient manner? Because we do not live to work. We work to live, in my opinion. Like, you create these things so you can live your life. You can enjoy the things you're talking about. And it is funny, brother, as I was listening to you, I even thought of that question as you said that for myself. And I'm like, I immediately fly fishing, playing more pickleball, golfing. But here's the other thing. I need to work as well because it makes me happy. So it's funny, I had somebody the other day say retirement. What a terrible word. We should replace that.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the idea, brother? Like, I don't see you ever retiring, because I can hear the passion in your voice. It just may mean I'm financially independent and I get to choose to do. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, I look at it this way, man. If I won the lottery tomorrow, like if I won $200 million, whatever I don't know what the lottery's at today, but let's say it's $200 million, I would still coach. I would still do what I'm doing. I would still be on podcasts. I would still coach people on how to live the exit lifestyle. I would still write books. I would still take speaking engagements. I would still do that. Now, would I do the hard money lending? No, I'd probably stop doing that. Would I do some of these other things? Probably no, I'd probably stop doing those. But I would still do this because this is what God put me on the earth for. Most entrepreneurs aren't living that spot. They're not in that spot. They're still doing something that they feel like that they should do, and they should on themselves all the time, and let other people should on them, and they are doing what they should rather than what they want and what they desire to do. So I don't ever plan to retire, because I don't think about what, I don't know what that means, because I would go nuts if I didn't have anything to do. Now, I would probably spend a year riding a motorcycle and doing RV, but once I get that out of my system, okay, now what? What am I going to do next? I got to do something. And it's interesting, James, that you bring up retirement, because think about this. For the entrepreneurs who are listening to this, we sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, we talk about our corporate, our colleagues in the corporate world, as W-2s. And we look at them and go, how dumb it is to put in 40 years of work, build up a 401k just to spend 15 years enjoying your life. How stupid is that? Okay, hello, entrepreneur. You're doing the same thing. Like, you're spending whatever amount of years it is building, hoping one day a VC guy will come in and offer you a big check so you can walk away. Why wouldn't you not want to figure out how to live that life now? I mean, why can't we figure out how to retire in place? If we're going to use that term, why can't we do it now? Let's figure out, let's stay in our business. Let's make sure that we still have income and tax benefits that come through it, but get to live the life that we really, really want.
What are some of the systems that allow you to do that, brother? And I know you've touched on a couple, but look, a good friend of mine has this show and it's called Rise and Grind. And philosophically, we just see the world differently. And he's been extremely successful. Look, this is not to say anything negative about, I just think of when you grind and grind and grind, eventually it goes to nothing. There will be nothing left. That's the idea of grinding. Yeah. And when I hear this philosophy from the gurus and these sages on the stage, like, you got to get up at 4 a.m. and you got to grind 16 hours. And I'm like, dude, that is the worst advice you can give someone. So instead of saying, and bagging on that, what are some better ways to go about it, Jason? Because I do want to change that narrative for entrepreneurs, for people that do want to succeed, but also, take care of some other really important things, like their family, like their faith, like their travel, whatever their other passions are. So how do we go about that, man?
Well, that's a very observant perspective and question that you've asked there. And this is really at the heart of everything we're talking about, is that how do you design your business to support your life rather than how do you get your life out, work it around your business? And it does require the right systems and processes. But I think it kind of goes back to something I was working with some clients this morning, and I talked about this, is that these rise and grind people, and I don't know who you're talking about, but the only thing I want to rise and grind are coffee beans, right? That's it. Just grind some coffee beans, make some coffee. Like, I'm not, grinding is over. I don't think we should do that. The grinding is way overrated. I don't think this grind porn, as I referred to, is like, this is not helping the entrepreneurial community. It is creating lots more problems than it should. So what do we do? So you got this one side of the Instagram and TikTok gurus out there that are saying, get up at 4. It used to be the 5 a.m. club. Now it's moving to 4. At some point, they're going to say, just don't sleep at all. All right. Well, they're going to say, don't do it, because you got to do, and they're pushing and peddling something called routines. They call these routines. You got to have a morning routine. You got to have an afternoon routine. You got to have an evening routine. And for a lot of people, routines work because they need that structure, or they can't get crap done. And that's okay if that's you. And that is a lot of people. But there are a lot of other people like me who don't do well in a routine. I love change. I love change. Love it too much, my wife says. So I like things to change. I want them to change. So what I've discovered over the last 20 years is that there is a difference between rhythm and routine. And a lot of people push and pull and peddle routines as the only way to do it. You can't be successful unless you have the 5 a.m. routine. You got to do my miracle morning, or you got to do this. And certainly there's nothing wrong with what they're pushing, except to the extent that they're legalistic about it, saying you have to do it in order to be like me. That's legalism. Like, legalism is, I'm going to do something, and if you don't do it like me, you're not as good as me. That's in the religious world, and that's in the business world. And that's what routines sometimes, more often than we'd like to admit, they float into this legalism. And that's why people can sell millions of books, and they can do podcasts, and they can do speaking engagements on routines, and they make everybody in the audience feel guilty that they're not living up to that person's standard. And now what happens? Maybe half of 1% of the people it works for, and they go and they end up on their testimonial videos, but the rest of the people go home feeling guilty, and they're like, what happened? Why am I not able to succeed? It might be because you're a rhythm person and not a routine person. You see, a routine is a mechanically performed set of things that you do on a regular basis, oftentimes such that you don't even think about it. Like maybe brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth is a pretty mechanical routine. Most people don't think about it. You just brush and you go away. But rhythms are the beat to which life operates. I mean, think about the rhythm of your heart. When I ride my bicycle and I work out in the mornings, my heart rate gets to 150, 155. But normally I'm around 60, 62. That's my normal rhythm of my heartbeat. But at times it goes up, times it goes down. You see, the routine people want us to live at 155 beats per minute all the time. And that's not healthy. They want us to grind, and your heart will burst. Your life will burst. Your family will explode. Your kids will resent you. And at one day you might make all the money you wanted, but you're still dead. I think that many people are just rhythm people like me. It's like, we just want to have a rhythm about our life. We want to go in and out, and we want to create systems and processes that support that rhythm. I'll give you some examples. So my life, I don't set an alarm. I don't set an alarm in the mornings, but my body naturally wakes me up between 5:30 and 6 almost every day it doesn't matter how late I go to bed. At 5:36, my body is just rhythmically, whatever the word is, as it wakes me up. And then in the mornings, I have a prayer time, and then I go make a pot of coffee. There's my grinding. So I make a pot of coffee, then I put on my workout clothes. I get on my bicycle. I go ride for 35, 40 minutes. I come back, I do some TRX in the garage, and then I go sit down and cool off and have a cup of coffee. I'd go through my prayer list. But if I don't do any of that in that order, I don't feel guilty about it. I'm good. Where the routine people would say, you screwed up. You got to make up for it tomorrow. I don't listen, if you're a routine person, more power to you. That's okay. But a lot of us are just rhythm people. And I think we need to recognize that when we build our businesses, build businesses that allow your body and your life to operate in the rhythm that you want.
Yeah, it's with your background, because you've mentioned the pastoral thing a couple times, where obviously faith is important to you. It is interesting. I go back to church and the things I disliked about church when I was growing up. And it was like, you have to do this or you're a sinner. You have to do this or you're wrong. That was the stuff that turned me off. But it's like a guide. Look, these are things you should probably do for your body, right? You should probably work out as you did. You should probably be grateful, do some prayers. You should do these things. But if it doesn't go in the specific routine, that's okay. There's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, because you mentioned the word culture, and I'm a huge proponent of recognizing and making sure you enrich and you're very clear on what your culture is. With 12 companies, brother, my question is each one different? And what do you do to go about really setting that tone? Because you talked about just genuinely caring about the people around you, which is one of those culture pieces so many people forget. It's like, hey, give a shit about the person you're working with. But my question, so the two questions in there is each company different culture? And how do you go about setting that? Because you said that was a big part of your success in these companies.
So the short answer is no, they're not different cultures. They're the same one, because it's based on my personality as the founder. We get the benefit of that as founders up until about 20 employees. Past 20 employees, you start losing that influence. And but it doesn't diminish, or it diminishes a little bit, but it doesn't disappear. And you can look at the culture of a company like Apple, that with hundreds of thousands of employees, that culture was established largely by Steve Jobs. The culture of excellence, the culture of think outside the box, think different, what they said back in the 90s. That culture was established, but it's changing. And I think all of us, I'm a Mac guy. I'm an Android phone guy, but I'm a Mac computer guy. But the iOS fanboys out there, they in their honest moments would admit that the culture at Apple has changed a lot now that there's a new CEO in place. So the culture from founders to about 20, 25 employees is 100% controlled by what the founder does. So if you've got really bad employees, people talking back to each other, there's anger around the office, it's because of you. You're the reason for it. Now, can it be fixed? Yes, that's the good news. But the bad news, you caused it. And you get to 1,000 employees, the culture is really created by leadership, not just a single individual. So I think one of my companies, the lighting company, I think last time I checked, and I'm not involved in daily operations, but I think we've got 30-ish something employees, 30 or 40. And I'm not involved every day. So the culture has changed a little bit. I mean, they're still committed to the same things. We're committed to, treating other people the way we want to be treated. We're committed to excellence. Those are things that I instilled early on as culture initiatives when I was leading the company on a daily basis. The other companies, either have no employees or just have an assistant. And so the culture is still, we're having fun. We're committed to doing the right things. We're going to pay attention to each other. We're going to care for each other. How you doing today? It's not just business. It's this business should support your life. I believe that for my employees as much as I believe it for the entrepreneurs that I coach.
I have an odd question, if you will. It's just because you've mentioned motorcycle, you've mentioned riding your bike. What is it about two wheels and being outdoor? Say Peloton. You said bike, getting out and you're going.
Yeah.
What is it about two wheels and you just cruising around, man? What's that about for you?
I don't know. I didn't start riding a motorcycle until I was 30. So I didn't ride them as a kid. I mean, I had a buddy that had a dirt bike, and I went over to his house a couple of times. We'd ride a dirt bike, and it was fun, but it really wasn't my thing. But my parents wouldn't let me have one. But at 30, I was actually, the true story, I was on my way to do a funeral, to conduct a funeral. And I passed this little gas station, and there was a little Honda motorcycle for sale, and it said $400. And I thought, oh. So after the funeral was over, I rode back by there, and I went and looked at the bike, and I asked the guy about it. I didn't know much about him. I mean, I knew how to do a clutch. I knew how to change gears. And so I thought, you mind if I ride it? So I got on it. I rode it down the street, came back, and I thought, this is awesome. I like this. I like this a lot. So I went home and I pitched it to my wife, and I told her, I said, listen, it's a 1978 Honda Twin Star 185. It's tiny, top speeds 55 miles an hour downhill with a wind behind you. And it's only $400. And she goes like, well, okay. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can do this, is for real. So she drove me over there. We paid the man $400 and I drove it home. From that day forward, I became a biker. Not Hell's Angel, but like, I am a motorcyclist. I love to ride. And so I've owned dozens of motorcycles. I have 2 now. I just love the feeling, the wind therapy, I call it, to get out there, just the 2 hands in the wind, and just that whole experience. And luckily for me, my wife also enjoys riding with me. So we rode to dinner last night. We hopped on one of my bikes, and we rode over to a town about 20 minutes away, and met my parents and my nephews and my daughter. And we had dinner, and then we rode home. So it's just part of what I love. And then earlier this summer, we went on a 5 guys, all friends. We all went out to Colorado and back, did 3,100 miles in 10 days on our bikes. And just, I love it. I love being out there. And then I just discovered bicycling like 3 months ago. I've owned a bicycle for years. As a matter of fact, the first thing I ever bought on a credit card when I was 19 was a mountain bike. I still own that mountain bike. I don't ever ride it. My wife wants me to get rid of it, but it's sitting in the garage. But when you moved into a new house in March, and I went out one morning to go walk just for some exercise, and I looked at the bike and I thought, huh. So I hopped on the bike and I started riding. I went down the Greenway and rode, 8 or 9 miles, and I came back and I'm like, that was awesome. And so now I do it every day. So it is kind of the same thing. It's the 2, fists in the wind and having a great time and just conversing with God and seeing all the nature. And I love it. I love it.
It's freeing for sure. You brought up your wife many times through this podcast, and experiencing someone that supported me in this entrepreneurial spirit, the ups and downs. Talk to me about her role in this, brother, because I imagine it's substantial in support, in making some solid decisions, in grounding you. Talk to me about that, man, because I so often, at least I forget to recognize how much she has been a part of this journey. Whether she's part of the business, quote unquote, or not, she is there every step of the way. What's that been like for you?
So Christy is my best friend in the world. We've known each other for 31 years. We met on a blind date when we were teenagers, and we got married at 20 and 19. We've been married 27 years, and I can't imagine being in this world without her. And so she's a big part of everything that I do. And so she's been extremely supportive through all of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has lots of ups and downs, and there's this line, this invisible horizontal line for all of us, that when we go below that line, we're probably out of business. And other than you individually, as your spouse probably is the only other one who knows how close you are to that line at any one time. And so she's been a great support. Now, interestingly enough, though, she's not an entrepreneur, has no entrepreneur in her body at all. Like, has no inclination towards it, no interest in it, not whatsoever. She's a worker. She's an employee. Like, that's what she wants to be. She has no desire to do entrepreneurship, but she has totally supported everything I've done. And she's got intuition, as most women do, about what should and shouldn't happen. And there are things that I come to her with. I'm like, what do you think about this? And she'll give me her opinion. And other times I don't go to her because I want to keep her out of that. I don't want to open that cycle for stress in her life. Let me just keep it for myself. But she's been a phenomenal part of this whole journey.
27 years. I love to hear it. And I'm sure that'll continue for many, many years, which is amazing. I love that. I just open forum, brother. Anything I didn't know enough to ask you, you want to leave it with the audience, go ahead, brother. Anything I forgot to ask, I didn't know enough to ask, that you're like, I got to leave your audience with this.
Well, I tell you, my relationship with my wife has been one of these peculiar curiosities that I think the internet has revealed that there's a void in the marketplace. Nobody's talking about this stuff. So I was on another podcast a couple of months ago, and we were talking business, but about 6 or 7 minutes of that podcast turned into kind of like what you just did, asked about my wife. And that 30-second clip has now been viewed over 8.4 million times.
Oh,
And it's all about, like, we don't use the word divorce. My wife's number one, kids come number two in our life. And I talked about that on the show, and it's just, that's how we live. And so there's been like 250,000 shares and likes on this post. And it's just, the comment section is insane. So if you are interested, go to the Real Jason Duncan on Instagram and go to my reels and scroll down. And there's one that you'll see, it says, why I put my wife before my kids, and read the comments. I mean, some of them are just absolutely insane, but a lot of it's just people haven't thought about that before. I think our society today thinks divorce is a natural and okay option to a relationship that doesn't work. So you go into a relationship with your wife or your husband, and you're like, yeah, if this doesn't work, until uncomfortability do us part, and we get uncomfortable with each other, yeah, okay, we're out. Well, I was brought up, and I believe this is like until death do us part. We're in this for the long haul, and I made a commitment to you. You made a commitment to me. We're going to see this thing through. So one of the interesting things is that I think the internet, what people want to hear is like, what does that look like? How does that look? And of course, there's a lot of people that don't want any part of that. They think it's religious mumbo jumbo. And it has nothing to do with religion. It's just about a commitment that I made. And I stood up before a group of people 27 years ago, and I committed to this woman for the rest of my life. And why would I be a liar? Why would I say, well, because I didn't like the way you looked at me. We're out. I'm out. Like that doesn't make any sense. So that's one of the most interesting things. And I was on a podcast as a guest yesterday, and that guy, the host, had watched that. And so he dove into that immediately. He's like, oh, all right, we got to talk about this. Evidently people want to know. So we talked probably on 15, 20 minutes just on that concept alone. So I'm not a marriage counselor. I've had people DM me through Instagram and ask me questions about their marriage. I'm like, listen, you need help. You need a counselor. I can't help you. But if that's something people are just generally interested in, I've got a great relationship with my wife, 27 years deep. We're not going anywhere, doing anything different. We're ride or die. It's all the way. And my kids are great too. Like, I've got two fantastic kids. My son's coming over later today. He's going to be house sitting for us while my wife and I are about to fly out to Vegas for a conference and do some stuff out there. He's coming to house sit. My daughter just left this morning to go to Florida with some girlfriends, and like, life is fantastic. So I'm just grateful to be here. I'm so glad to be on your show. And if entrepreneurs are out there who want to learn how to live the exit lifestyle, I'm your man. That's exactly what I do. Nobody's going to get you there faster than me. I guarantee you.
That's solid, man. And we could spend a good hour on that topic alone, because similar to a business in a degree, look, grit, persistence, communication, there's some staple things that you have to have and allow the business to evolve and change and grow as we do as human beings. Jason, you mentioned Instagram. Anywhere else that they should really connect with you to help them on their entrepreneur spirit, or just to hear more about life in general, man? You're an interesting guy.
Well, thank you for that. Here's what I would pose. Like, you can find me on any of the social medias at the Real Jason Duncan. But the question I would have is, are you ready to exit? Are you, as a listener, ready to exit? Are you ready to take that step into that place that JM talked about? Because if you don't know, I can help you figure that out. So you can go to therealjasonduncan.com/am I ready. And it's a coaching program that you can invest in. It is an investment. And that coaching program, just specifically, I created that just to help you see how far your timeline is. You could be ready within the next 6 months, and you don't even know it. You just got a few little tweaks to make, and you could start living this exit lifestyle, traveling, doing whatever you want. Or you might be 3 or 4 years away because of the stuff that you've created. But that entire coaching program I created specifically to help you answer that question. Am I ready? So go to therealjasonduncan.com/am I ready.
Not a cooler feeling than that. If he can speed up your process, get you to exit without exiting, right?
Yep.
Right away, there's not probably a better feeling than you helping people realize some of those dreams and live those lifestyles. Brother, I appreciate you coming and sharing so much wisdom and knowledge. It was eye-opening and a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. You've been a great host, and I appreciate your questions, and I hope this conversation has been a blessing to your listeners.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, look, guys, you heard it. If you want to get into being an entrepreneur, if you want to learn how to live your lifestyle, go check him out. I mean, I'm going to spend some more time with Jason just because I think he's a cool guy. I don't ride motorcycles. Like to learn a little more about it. But absolutely go back, listen to this podcast, share it with somebody that may be struggling with their own entrepreneur journey or is considering getting into it. And until next time, you guys, remember, your mindset matters. We'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.